Ciao everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Joey. Today I'm doing my second video with the October Sam's bead box. It was called Marigold Memory, and I have on my mat here 3 pairs of earrings, a bracelet, and I'm going to make a beaded tassel, a gemstone beaded tassel. And was my favorite strand in the box, and I still haven't been able to bring myself to cut it open. I just love Czech glass fire polish rounds, but this color is just amazing. So I pretty much designed a piece with these gorgeous amethyst coin beads and this bead and my leftovers of these rubies or garnets. These were purple garnets, I think. So I think I'm going to come back in another video and do the bracelet design that I just have had these out here. I love them. I just keep looking at them. But I do have a really cool bracelet in today's video and 3 pairs of earrings. This first pair is super simple. I just loved these triangular Czech glass beads, and it is literally 1 bead and a little scrap of 20 gauge wire that makes this stunning earring. And it's an all-in-one, so you don't need an extra ear wire. It's just all-in-one. And I use my craft wire with an anti-tarnish coating. I'm lucky that I don't have metal allergies, so I can put this in my piercing and it doesn't bother me. But if you would like to do this type of a design and you want to up your game a little bit and put even a higher quality metal in your ears, I can put a link to some gold-filled craft wire. It's a little bit more expensive, but you need such short lengths for doing designs like this, so that's just an option. And I do have 2 more pairs of earrings, but I want to share the bracelet first and get this done. This is going to be largely a connecting project, and I've kind of laid out my pieces because what I thought was so beautiful from this box was all the different shapes and colors, and I decided to embrace that with the design and literally choose like 1 of each bead. So this rectangular bead and just turning it into a simple component, 1 of the triangular beads, and turning it into a simple component. And I've just chosen like the other things. And so what I'm going to connect them with are these funky, cool, handmade, artisan, hammered wire connectors. No 2 are alike. So I've just played with some lengths of 20 gauge wire, and I have 1 more to make. Don't even try to get them alike. If you like this idea, it's very contemporary and avant-garde and extremely artistic. So it really does have that handmade artisan quality, the squiggles and the hammering, all of it. And so what it's going to look like is I'm going to open my simple loop on my component and connect it to the wire component, or the wire, what am I going to call that? I need a good name for it. A wire squiggle just doesn't sound exciting enough, but that's really what it is. And so they're just going to, the squiggles have simple loops on each end, and they are hammered. So you could really leave them. They're work hardened. You could really leave them, but that little slight bit of opening that you need to do, doesn't harm the component. And I just like to make sure all my loops are also work hardened. And so that is the start of this cool, funky bracelet. And I'm just going to go down the line like that, attaching my squiggles, just attaching my squiggle. And I've hammered both sides, so it doesn't matter which side you connect to. And so it looks like that. I think it's such a cute bracelet. And so let me show you what I did. I'm just using like scraps of wire, and I'm making use of a couple of my tools here. My flat nose plier is one of the things I use to get my squiggles, and my round nose plier. And what I started out with, you can either do your simple loops by hand, or you can use the 1-step looper. I use my 1-step looper a lot. I kind of mixed it up on this project though. I did some by hand. And so my first simple loop is in there. You don't have to fuss over it if it's not closed just perfectly, because it's going to get hammered and distorted, and then you'll go back at the end and do some more sculpting on your squiggle. But I started with my flat nose plier right at the end of the loop and just started letting the tool give me some squiggles like that. And then if I want to get a bigger one, I'll come out here and come out here and do another one. And then if it was looking too straight for me, then I'd come in with my round nose pliers, come down here to the fatter side and get a little squiggle in there. And then from here you can either use your pliers to make your simple loop. I've been doing it both ways. Just but I do want a blunt, do want a nice clean cut on the end. And I'm just going to get this simple loop, turn my plier this way. I want it to be on, this side of my squiggle because it's a connector. So just bend that around so that my wire is touching itself. And like I said, we're going to hammer this. And so, just like any little look that you want, I did tend to do some hand sculpting as well. And I'll do even more after it's hammered. So let me set some of these tools aside and bring in my little bench block. And I'm just going to lay my squiggle on there. And I have a whole collection of hammers, but this is a really cool hammer. It has some different options for the texture side, and you just like unscrew it and change out this head. It came with a box. I think there were 6 or 8. I can't even remember, but I really like this one with the little kind of square grid on it. And this side is totally flat, so it's almost like a riveting hammer. And I'm just going to gently tap to flatten the wire. You could leave the wire around if you want, but I don't know, there's something about, there's a quality, an artisan quality to hammered wire. And I'm just going to flip it over and just make sure that both sides are flat. And then I didn't do much with my texturing, but I just gave my piece a couple of smacks, a couple of whacks, just to put those kind of square dents in it. And you can see that I've totally opened this loop. So that's why I said you don't have to fuss about your loops too much, because after you hammer, you change the molecules in the wire and you work hard in it, and you spread it out and you do change it. So that is literally all I did. As I said, no two are alike. You don't really want them alike for this look. And then I'm going to come back with my round nose pliers, of course, and close my loops and pull them so that they're kind of in the center of my squiggle. This one didn't open up so much. You never know when you hammer. And then I'm just going to push things together and just, kind of I play with it a little bit until I really like the shape, until I think I got a cool shape. And that's what I have. Make sure that is closed. Make sure your loops are closed really well. That just gives it like a quality look. And now for my components here, so that one will go on the end. For my components, I also used my one-step looper and my little scraps of wire, and I just featured the beads, just making a little component with no bead caps or spacers or anything. I just fed on my beads and just continue to attach down the line. And I just played with the beads to come up with alternating the colors. So that gets my length just right. I ended up having an extra bead, but look how cool this bracelet is. I absolutely love this like artisan link, and I just need to, I had an extender chain out here, but I got my length just perfectly, so I'm just going to pop some jump rings and a lobster claw clasp, and I'm going to use these sparkly fancy jump rings to do, I'm going to do that on one end and do a small one for my lobster claw clasp, and I'm going to put one of my swivel base lobster claw clasps on this end and put my larger ring and just make sure that's closed really well and make sure my ring is closed really well. These are the most awesome jump rings. They are very heavy duty gauge, and the diamond cutting just makes it so that you cannot see where they're opened or closed. And I chose this squiggle because I had a little bit chunkier loop on the end of this one, so it's going to work perfectly for adding my clasp. This is so gorgeous. I love it, but I want to make a little tassel charm for this. So I have threaded a number 10 beading needle with some beige 10-pound wildfire, and I have taken a piece of my 20 gauge wire and put a pretty chunky, pretty large simple loop in it. I want it to fit inside my bead cap, but that's what I'm going to tie off, and I have one of these drucks that I used in my first bracelet with this box. So I'm just going to back that down, and I'm going to come to this loop with, put my needle through it and put my wildfire through and just tie a knot, just tie like a half hitch knot here and leave a tail. So if you've never made a tassel before, this is a really easy way to make them. So I'm just tying a couple of knots here, and you're going to tie to this again when you do it this way. So that's all you need, and just enough of a tail that you can easily tie. And I have some 11/0 seed beads and some 8/0 seed beads here, and I'm just going to create a little pattern. And this is going to be a really small tassel, so I'm going to do, let me see. So it's helpful to pop your bead cap on so that you can gauge how long you want to string your tassel. And I think that 5 of those garnets with an 11/0 seed bead in between is a really pretty length. And then for my stopper bead on the end, I'm going to put an 8/0 gold seed bead and see how that looks. And so what I'm going to do now is skip over that 8/0 gold and run my needle back through all my garnets and all my 11/0s and get back up to my loop. When you do this, you just want to be really careful that you don't skip a bead, because then your thread will be on the outside. Take my bead cap off again. So just run my needle back up through, making sure that I'm not skipping a bead. And then here's where you have the little tail that you can work with for tying off. So if you really are worried about the security of your tassel, you can tie off at the top every time you come back up to, the top. Just going to hold on to my 8/0 seed bead and pull so that there's no gaps in my thread. So it looks like that. And I don't usually tie off every single time, but the first time I'll go ahead and just do another little knot here. And so it looks funny, but I'm going to repeat the same thing, and I think I'm only going to have maybe 5 strands. Whatever fits under my bead cap without being too crowded at this opening here. So I'm going to repeat that at least 4 more times. So last one, I'm going to skip my last bead and run my needle through all my beads and get back up to the top, making sure I didn't skip a bead. I still have some tail. I've pretty much been tying off at the top. I'm just going to pull my stop bead at the end, just pull it tight and tie off to my tail thread. And if you want to put a little knotter's glue like GS Hypo Cement on your knot, you can totally do that. I'm going to just burn this off. Just melt it a little bit. Now to finish my tassel, I'm just going to pop my bead cap on and one of these little marigold drucks. And I am just going to I'll do a wire wrapped loop here. So I'm going to grab my cute little tassel at the top. Put a 90-degree bend in and come in with my round nose pliers. Everything is nice and secure. I'm going to snip and make sure that cut end is tucked, being really careful not to put any undue stress on my Czech glass druck here at the top. That is the cutest little tassel charm, and that's going to go on my bracelet on this end, I think. And I'm going to grab another one of my gold-filled diamond cut jump rings. I have a little trick. So many of you are returning to my channel, so you know what I'm about to do. But I am going to put this jump ring over the entire circumference. I never open my jump rings wide enough. It is such a bad habit. I'm going to put this over the entire circumference of my bracelet, not letting it go through a loop. And then I'm going to pop my charm on and close it really well. And then no matter which way I pick my bracelet up, it's a 360-degree floating charm that never gets stuck. When you attach that way, your charm just like goes around very easily. So whether I put my bracelet on this way or whether I pick it up and go this way, you know, my little tassel is always dangling. I absolutely am so crazy about this bracelet. It's so artistic, it's so artisan and colorful. All the colors of fall, I just love it. We're going to jump into an earring next. Let me just clean up my seed beads a little bit. So this is the simplest of the earrings, and maybe it's not the simplest. They're all pretty simple, but this one is just one bead and a piece of 20 gauge wire. I just love this bead. I love how rustic it is, the Picasso finish on the edge. So I'm just taking a little piece of my 20 gauge wire and I'm just going to warm and smooth and straighten it, and I'm going to put it through the bottom of the bead and leave enough coming out of the top about the same as what I'll need to do my ear wire. And then on the bottom I'm going to need a little bit more length. I did this morning about 3 hours ago. I've taken a break because my son's nurse was here today, so I hope I remember what I did. And let's see, I'm gonna make that the back side. Going to make that the back side, And I want a longer length to be coming from the bottom. And I'm going to push this with my thumb up to the top of the bead. So what I love about this is that when a bead is this beautiful, there's nothing in the way. You can just see it. It's like floating from the wire. So it's looking like that. And then I'm going to get a couple of wraps. So I'm just using the shape of the bead to get my wire around there, and I'm just going to get a couple of wraps around this core wire. And so normally I would like to mirror my earrings. I would have my spiral on the other earring coming in the opposite direction. I'm not doing that because all of these beads are the same, with the little rustic corner on the triangle is always on the right side. So I'm going to do these exactly the same. And one of the things that I do to kind of, it's artisan for sure, so they're not going to be identical no matter what you do. That's the human hand. But one of the things that I do is on my first earring, I measured this so that if you start out with the same length of wire, when you spiral, you stand a pretty good chance of getting them the same. And I did 1.5 inches on my first one. So I'm going to come right here and cut that at that 1.5 inch mark. And then I am simply going to start with a really small center. I'm using my tiny round nose pliers to make a really small loop to make the spiral tight. And then I'm just in small increments pushing against my finger. I'm going to make a coil all the way down to my bead. Just going to pull it right in front of the bead, and then with my thumb just push it down on top of the bead. And if you want to, on the back where this wire is, you can, if you want it really secure, you can give a little twist. You just want to be careful that you're not putting extra pressure on your bead. I did not do this one, so I'll do this one. Just grab the wire right in the middle and just put a little lightning bolt in there, and it just tightens the bead. Fix my spiral on this one. Just move it over a little bit. So I got my spirals pretty close to the same. So my earring is ready, and now to form the ear wire, I'm going to come right at the top and just give this a tiny little bit of a bend forward, so toward me. And then I'm going to use the largest step on my bail making plier. So I'm going to turn it this way and put my earring in here nice and straight and wrap this around the back. And it will bounce back a little bit, or you can pull it out if you need to make an adjustment. And I'm going to just match this up to this earring and snip it at the same point. And then you can either leave it like that or take your flat nose pliers, just do a tiny, about halfway inside, and just give that a little kick out, just about halfway. Just kick it out a little bit. And then you can either use a buffing block, a metal nail file works, like a vintage metal buffing block works, but I have my battery operated reamer with the wire rounder attachment in, so just fit the wire in that little cup on the end and press the button, and I get this unbelievably smooth, professional finish to my earring. It's so easy, and it's not sharp. It's, you know, really not craft wire anymore. So that sweet little pair of earrings is done. I'm crazy about those. I loved that bead, so I really wanted a pair of earrings out of that bead. And then the next one is super easy as well. It's a minimalist earring using some of the Czech glass fire polish drops, some of those seed beads. This stopper is a crimp bead, not a crimp tube, but a crimp bead. And again, it's just another, whoops, another little piece of my 20 gauge wire. So I'm just going to start with that, and I'm going to come in with my pliers and just make a bend in this. Actually want a nice blunt cut here. Always start with a blunt cut. And I'm just going to get a little bend in the wire, just like that, and just basically fold it, just like that. And I'll just copy my same pattern. I put this larger of the two size teardrops that were on that strand. I'm going to just straighten my wire a little bit. So see how that acts as a nice little stopper, and then I don't want to lose my crimp bead. They're very small. And I just created a pattern with 3 of these 8/0 seed beads, one of the bicones, Preciosa bicones from the mix, and topped it off with 3 more seed beads. And then I'm going to put my crimp bead on. And then again, I want to make sure that I'm looking at the very front of my earring, same way I did the other one. I'm going to get in here, I'm pushing down, and I'm just going to crimp down on that crimp bead. And that just makes a nice little stopper. And then I used, again, the measurement of my flat nose plier. I did this like 3 hours ago. Since I don't mass produce anything that I make, it is shocking to me how quickly I forget what I did, but that's what I did. I used the measurement on my flat nose plier. You get to the front here. And so I put my flat nose plier resting on my crimp bead, and I just gave this a bend. And then I came in with my chain nose pliers. Let me just check before I do it and see. Yes, that is what I did. You can take a Sharpie marker and put a mark on your pliers if you're like doing an earring like this where you're making quite a few of them. I'm just going to eyeball it. And again, keeping everything straight in the front. And then I'm just going to bend that down while it's in the tool. And I got them exactly the same. Yay. And I'm going to line these up and trim my second earring. Trim that wire at the same, as close to the same spot as I can. The beads are in the way when you do it, but it can be done. And just come right there and trim that wire. And same thing, I'm going to get rid of the sharpness. And on these I don't kick out the end, but you could. I like them like this. These are so cute. They're minimalist, they're chic, they go in and out of your piercings very easy. You don't need an earring back. And aren't they gorgeous? I just love those. Okay, last pair of earrings. Let me show you my sample earring. Look at this beauty. I absolutely love these Czech glass beads, and so I just played in my bead cap assortment, and it's the same assortment that the top cap for my tassel came from. And I'll put a link to these. They just have every size and shape of a cone bead topper or tassel topper you can imagine, from teeny tiny ones to a little bit larger ones, and these are just so useful. I play in here all the time, and so that's what I did. I went through that mix until I found one that just sat perfectly on the top of this bead, and I used a ball head pin because I don't want to obstruct the view of this bead. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And then this little ring at the top, I will show you. So many of you have seen me do this before because it's one of my favorite techniques. So I'll back this down. This is a scrap of my 49 strand bead stringing wire. I keep a scrap bag on my work cart behind me because it's perfect for earrings, rings. I don't really throw anything away. And so what I've done is I have 3 of those garnets with an 11/0 seed bead on this side, and then nothing in the middle, and then the same pattern on this side. And then I feed my crimp tube on one end and then take the other end and go through in the opposite direction and pull. And you get this beautiful little ring that way. And so you can see why there's no seed bead in between the 2 patterns. That's where I'm going to hang my drop. And then my crimp bead, or my crimp tube, goes at the top. And then I attached it to the ear wire with double jump rings. It just looks so great and it dangles so beautifully. And I'm using my magical crimping plier for this. It turns a number 2 crimp tube, or a 2mm crimp tube, into almost the identical size and shape as the 11/0 seed beads. 11/0 seed beads are generally 2mm, so it's just a perfect infinity ring. So I'm going to fit my bead in here, being careful not to crush anything, and I have it right in the center. And the tool does kind of push the beads away a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to give this a final tug before I close down. Just make sure everything is in there just right. Give those ends a final tug and close down. And so I've turned the crimp tube into a little square. And this is a really small ring because the garnets and 11/0 seed beads were really small. This is a little bit easier if you're doing a larger ring, but I really wanted this, so I'm just going to take my time and get my tool in here in the opposite direction. There we go, and close down. And then just rotate times. You have to like work inside the ring with the tool. And so it looks like that. Now I have to tell you guys, I am still like so crazy about the fire polish beads in this color, and I have plenty of these little garnets left over. And so what I am designing in my head, and I don't know if I'll do it off camera and just show it to you in my try on video, or if I'll actually make it, but I was thinking of making a bunch of these rings and alternating them with this fire polish and then with the amethyst coins, and making a bracelet that's coins, rings, and fire polish rounds, and just making a link bracelet. I just think that's, like, for me, a forever bracelet design, and just something I would wear all the time. The richest pinks and purples, I mean, those were my favorite things in the box. So I may be back with another video because that's the design that's rattling around in my head. Okay, and then what I did is I took a ball head pin and I just put it up through my bead and then popped my bead cap on. And then I'm going to come in here, making sure everything's pushed down nice and tight. And I'm going to bend this and do the beginning of a wire wrapped loop. I wish I had like a 3-inch ball head pin for this, but I don't, so I'm going to struggle a little bit. So if you have a longer head pin for this design, it would be a really good time to get those out for this. Then what I'm going to do is open this loop before I wrap it closed, and I'm going to come to that empty space where there was no seed bead on my ring. Get my fingers out of the way and just slip that ring on my drop. And now I'm going to come back and close up the space on my loop and do my best to wrap this nice and tight. Like I said, I wish I had longer ball head pins, but I really wanted a ball head pin, so I feel like I can do it. But if you have a longer head pin, this would be the time to get it out. Okay, I was able to do it, and now it's super simple. I am just going to add 2 jump rings, basically one on either side of my crimp bead, and it just centers this. And I made my ear wires. Again, I did these a little bit differently. I did my loop facing parallel to my mat, and it opens, you know, kind of at the top, so open it that way and put both of my jump rings in that loop. Okay, so I'm just going to gather up my jump rings and close this ear wire loop really well so that you don't see any space. And look at this. I love this pair of earrings too. I love them so much. You know, I said this when I was unboxing. When your quality of gemstones, these I think were grade A+, these garnets, and the Czech glass, and when your quality of your supplies is this way, it is so easy to get fine jewelry. Like, it looks like fine jewelry. It looks to me like jewelry that I would see in a glass case in a jewelry shop. I am crazy about this bracelet design, and I think this would make a stunning necklace as well, to do your own sort of handmade chain with every little squiggly artisan component being a little bit different than the previous one. I do have a discount code for Sam's Bead Box, and I will put that in the description box under this video, as well as links for your convenience. And I thank you so much for watching. I think if you are considering getting a bead box, I think Sam's is amazing. I am kind of new to the company, not quite, almost a year now, I think, but I absolutely love the quality, and it is expertly curated, and it's prolific. There's so much to work with. So I just think you can't go wrong if you're considering getting a bead box. It is a wonderful value. I thank you so much for watching. I would be so grateful for a thumbs up. It really helps support my work. And if the new feature to hype my video shows up for you, it would be lovely of you to do that. It really tells the YouTube algorithm to show this channel to newer people that there's quality content here, and it really is a great way to support an artist's work. So I thank you so much for your time and for choosing my video today, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao, friends.